You know the drill. You've spent hours gathering wood, carefully building your little fire structure, and finally, poof, you get it going. It roars to life, this awesome beacon of warmth and light. But then, in what feels like a few minutes, it's just a sad plume of smoke and a pile of dying embers. We've all been there, right? The constant, nagging chore of feeding the fire, and the pure frustration when it dies in the middle of the night, leaving you cold. It feels like a battle against time, and it's a battle we often lose. But what if I told you there's a forgotten technique, a secret born on the battlefields of World War II, that can create a fire that burns for days with almost no smoke? What if the very principles that kept soldiers warm in the frozen forests of Europe and cooked their rations silently in the jungles of the Pacific could be unlocked and used by you today? This isn't some campfire story. It's a real piece of lost history, a testament to the sheer ingenuity of people who face the ultimate survival test. In this video, we're going to bring that knowledge back. We'll dig into the history, uncover the science, and then, step by step, I'll show you the practical recipe for this incredible, long-burning, smokeless fuel and how you can use it. Number 1, the ultimate paradox of survival. Imagine a world carved from ice and fear. This was the reality for hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the winter of 1944, thrust into the Ardennes forest for what would become the Battle of the Bulge. The conditions were not merely difficult, they were a relentless, soul-crushing enemy in their own right. Temperatures plummeted to near zero, and in some areas felt as low as minus 28 degrees Celsius, accompanied by blizzards and freezing rain that reduced visibility to a few yards. In this frozen hell, fire was not a luxury for comfort. It was the fragile membrane between life and death. A small flame was the only tool capable of thawing frozen sea rations, melting snow for precious drinking water, and drying the perpetually damp socks to ward off the insidious threat of trench foot. A condition that could lead to gangrene and amputation. Beyond the physical, the psychological weight of the cold was immense. It was a consuming distraction, a constant misery that drained morale, induced a state of despair, and amplified the physical fatigue of combat. Soldiers watched as their own equipment failed, with rifles jamming and vehicles freezing solid overnight. The human cost was staggering. Many wounded soldiers who couldn't be evacuated in time simply froze to death in their foxholes. Yet this life-sustaining flame presented a terrible paradox. In the stark, snow-covered landscape, a traditional fire was an open invitation to the very enemy you were trying to survive. It was a beacon of death, a clear signal in a theater of war where concealment was paramount. This fundamental conflict, the need for warmth versus the need for stealth, drove one of the most critical yet unsung innovations of the war. The quest for a fire that could save your life without getting you killed. Number 2, the anatomy of a deadly signal. For a soldier huddled in a foxhole, the cheerful glow and rising smoke of a campfire, a symbol of comfort in any other context, became a different kind of death sentence. On the modern battlefield of the Second World War, detection meant destruction, and a conventional fire was a masterclass in self-betrayal. The science is simple. The smoke that billows from a typical wood fire is nothing more than a cloud of unburned particles. It's a sign of an inefficient, incomplete combustion process. In the barren, high-contrast landscape of a European winter, a rising column of white or gray smoke against the sky was an unmistakable giveaway. To a trained enemy artillery spotter, this plume was a perfect targeting indicator, allowing them to calculate range and position with deadly accuracy. Entire positions could be pinpointed and obliterated based on a single careless fire. Even if artillery wasn't a threat, the smoke acted as a signpost for snipers who were masters of observation and patience. A wisp of smoke could lead a sniper to patiently observe an area for hours, waiting for a target to reveal themselves. The danger didn't end when the sun went down. At night, the flickering light of a flame, visible for miles in the darkness, transformed a hidden camp into a glaring beacon. It offered a precise point of aim for mortars and machine guns, and it silhouetted anyone moving around it, making them easy targets. This tactical dilemma was not lost on commanders or the soldiers themselves. The very fire needed to prevent freezing to death could trigger an artillery barrage, guide a sniper's bullet, or expose a patrol to a nighttime ambush. The desperate imperative was clear. Find a way to generate heat without producing the telltale signatures of smoke and light. This drove the relentless pursuit of stealth fire, a quest that unfolded on two parallel fronts: the official, top-down innovations from military engineers, and the unofficial, bottom-up improvisations born from the sheer ingenuity of soldiers in the field. Number 3, the German solution: engineering a smokeless flame. The German military was famously forward-thinking in its approach to equipping the individual soldier, and they were among the first to formally address the paradox of stealth fire. Their solution was a masterpiece of chemical engineering and practical design, the Esbit stove. The name Esbit is an acronym for Erich Schum's Brennstoff in Tablettenform, which translates to Erich Schum's fuel in tablet form. Invented by Schum in 1936, this technology was born from a vision to provide a portable, reliable heat source for civilians on the go, but its military applications were immediately obvious. The core of the system was the fuel itself, hexamine tablets. Hexamine, a white crystalline compound discovered in 1859, was a minor revolution for field equipment. When compressed into tablets, it became an ideal military fuel. It possessed a high energy density, meaning a small, lightweight tablet could produce a significant amount of heat, burning at temperatures up to 760 degrees Celsius. Crucially, it burned with a nearly smokeless, faint blue flame that was difficult to detect from a distance. Unlike other potential fuels, it did not liquefy as it burned, eliminating the risk of messy, dangerous spills in a cramped foxhole or vehicle. After combustion, it left behind almost no ash, erasing another trace of a soldier's presence. The stove designed to use these tablets, the Model 9, was equally ingenious. It was a small, foldable box made of zinc-coated steel that could fit in a soldier's pocket. When opened, its hinged sides would lock into place to support a mess tin or a small pot directly over the burning tablet, concentrating the heat efficiently. This combination of a purpose-built stove and a chemically engineered fuel provided the German soldier with a reliable, smokeless, and highly portable method for heating rations and drinks. It was a significant tactical advantage, allowing troops to maintain their strength and morale in brutally cold conditions without broadcasting their location to the enemy. Number 4, the Allied answer: rival technologies in the field. While the German army was well equipped with the innovative Esbit stove, Allied forces were simultaneously developing their own solutions to the critical problem of providing a smokeless, portable heat source for troops in the field. The British Army, for instance, issued a device colloquially known as the Tommy Cooker. This compact stove, used in both World War I and refined for World War II, was designed to be lightweight and easily carried by a Tommy, the slang term for a British soldier. The most common World War II versions of the Tommy Cooker consisted of a small steel ring that would fit onto a can of gelled fuel. This fuel, often a form of solidified alcohol or methylated spirits, burned with a controlled flame suitable for heating a mess tin of water, for tea, or warming a portion of a ration. Several variations and commercial versions existed, some featuring small folding stands fueled by solid tablets, similar to the German hexamine. These were issued to troops especially for major operations like the D-Day landings, where soldiers would be operating for the first 24 hours with only the rations they could carry. However, the performance of these early Allied stoves was sometimes considered unreliable. Soldiers in the First World War had complained that it could take an excessively long time to boil even a small amount of water. While the designs were improved, the principle remained a trade-off between portability and heating power. American troops also had their own portable heating systems, though often the solution was less standardized across all units. Like the British, they employed small folding stoves that could use various solid fuel tablets or gels. The main goal was always the same: a contained, low-visibility flame. These official technologies from both Allied and Axis powers represented a shared understanding of a fundamental battlefield truth. In modern warfare, survival depended not just on firepower, but on mastering your own environmental signature. Number 5, when the supply lines fail, the birth of battlefield alchemy. Official military issue solutions like the Esbit stove and Tommy cooker were invaluable, but they shared a critical vulnerability. They were entirely dependent on a functioning supply chain. War, however, is the embodiment of chaos, and nowhere was this more apparent than during the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler's surprise offensive was specifically designed to exploit Allied weakness in a region ill-suited for winter operations, counting on poor weather to ground Allied aircraft and disrupt their famously robust logistical network. For the first few days, the plan worked with terrifying effectiveness. The German onslaught tore a 50-mile bulge into the American lines, surrounding entire units and severing them from their support. For the soldiers in these cut-off positions, like the defenders of Bastogne, resupply was a fantasy. Ammunition, medical supplies, and food became dangerously scarce. The precious factory-made fuel tablets ran out, and a soldier was suddenly thrust back into a primitive survival scenario, but with the added threat of a modern army actively hunting him. It was in this crucible of isolation and desperation that the true genius of the common soldier emerged. This was the moment when rigid military doctrine gave way to sheer, unadulterated improvisation. When the official solution was gone, they didn't surrender to the cold. They simply invented their own. This was battlefield alchemy, the art of turning the mundane debris of war into the tools of survival. Across the frozen forests and shattered villages of the Ardennes, and indeed in every theater of the war, soldiers and partisans began to develop their own secret formulas for a fire that could keep them alive. It wasn't taught in any manual. It was a body of knowledge passed from one veteran to another, born from pure, desperate necessity. They had to create a fuel that was not only effective, but could be made from the scavenged scraps available in a war zone. Number 6, the improvised fuel cake, a recipe forged in desperation. When the factory-made fuel was gone, the soldiers' ingenuity took over, leading to the creation of improvised smokeless fuel cakes. This wasn't a standardized process, but a piece of fieldcraft, with recipes varying based on what could be scavenged from the immediate environment. The core ingredients, however, remained remarkably consistent across different theaters of war: a fat source and a carbon source. The most common fat source was animal lard, painstakingly scavenged from cooked rations like the American C rations or K rations, which often contained tins of processed meat. Soldiers would carefully collect the grease after heating their meals, melting it down in a mess tin. For the carbon, they turned to charcoal. This could be gathered from the remains of old, cold campfires, ensuring the wood had already released its smoke-producing impurities, or made from scratch by partially burning wood and then smothering it with dirt to starve it of oxygen. The charcoal was then crushed into a fine, black dust. The process was simple and grimly practical. In a mess tin held over a low flame, the salvaged fat was melted into a liquid. Then, handfuls of the charcoal dust were stirred in until the concoction formed a thick, black, gritty paste. To help the mixture solidify and hold its shape, a binder was often added. And this could be anything from a few flakes of shaved bar soap, which was commonly issued, to a glob of pine resin gathered from nearby trees. This thick, odorous paste was then packed into any available container, an empty ration tin, a discarded cup, or even shaped by hand, and left to cool and harden into a dense, solid block. These makeshift fuel cakes were a marvel of resourcefulness. They represented a complete, self-contained system for survival, created from the literal scraps of war. They could be wrapped in wax cloth for waterproofing and easily carried in a pocket or pack, ready to provide a life-saving, smokeless flame at a moment's notice. Number 7, the science of invisible fire. Why the fuel cakes worked. The remarkable effectiveness of the improvised fuel cakes was not magic. It was rooted in the fundamental science of complete combustion. The smoke that makes a regular wood fire so visible is simply a collection of unburned particles. Tar, soot, and other volatile organic compounds that haven't been fully oxidized. A smoky fire is an inefficient fire. The soldier-made fuel cakes, however, were engineered for maximum efficiency, even if their creators only understood the principles through trial and error. The first key ingredient, charcoal, is almost pure carbon. The process of making charcoal has already burned off the volatile, smoke-producing compounds found in raw wood, leaving a material that naturally burns hot and clean. The second ingredient, animal fat, served a dual purpose. It acted as a dense, high-energy fuel source, similar to the wax in a candle. When the cake was lit, the heat would melt the fat, which would then be drawn into the porous structure of the charcoal through capillary action. This wicking effect ensured that the fuel was delivered slowly and consistently to the flame. More importantly, the fat allowed the fuel to burn at an extremely high temperature. This intense heat ensured that the carbon from the charcoal was burned as completely as possible. In an ideal burn, the carbon atoms combine fully with oxygen, producing little more than invisible carbon dioxide, water vapor, and a tremendous amount of radiant heat. The result was a steady, quiet, and nearly invisible blue flame, releasing minimal particulate matter into the air. This wasn't just a fire, it was a controlled chemical reaction, optimized for stealth and heat output. By pre-processing the fuel, turning wood into charcoal, and combining it with a clean-burning, high-energy binder, the soldiers had intuitively created a system that maximized thermal efficiency while minimizing the visible signature, a life-saving principle of chemistry on the battlefield. Number 8, ancient wisdom on a modern battlefield. The legacy of smart fire. Alongside developing advanced fuels, soldiers in World War II rediscovered and perfected ancient survival techniques to hide their fires. The most famous of these is the Dakota fire hole. While its name is associated with the Dakota people of the American plains, the principle is a universal piece of human ingenuity found in various cultures. The Dakota and other plains tribes used it to combat the high winds of the prairie, reduce the risk of starting grass fires, and cook efficiently in a landscape where fuel was often scarce. For a World War II soldier, its military advantages were profound and immediately obvious. The technique is brilliant in its simplicity. It involves digging 2 connected holes in the ground. The first, larger hole, serves as the fire chamber, where the fuel is placed and burned. Then a second, smaller tunnel is dug, starting a short distance away and angling down to connect with the base of the main fire pit. This connecting tunnel acts as a natural bellows. As the fire in the main chamber heats the air, The hot air rises and escapes. This creates a vacuum at the base of the fire, which in turn sucks cool, fresh air through the intake tunnel, feeding a constant and direct supply of oxygen to the coals. This draft effect creates an incredibly hot and efficient fire that consumes its fuel completely, resulting in very little smoke. The flames are kept below ground level, concealing the telltale light from distant observation. A soldier could place a grill or green sticks over the top to cook a meal or boil water, leaving almost no visible trace of their activity. So why did World War II soldier fires burn for so long and with such stealth? Because they were burning smart. It wasn't a single secret, but a mindset forged by necessity. It was a combination of purpose-built chemical engineering found in official equipment like the Esbit stove, the brilliant battlefield alchemy used to create improvised fuel cakes from scavenged materials, and the clever adoption of ancient wisdom like the Dakota fire hole. So, why did World War II soldier fires burn for days while yours dies in hours? Because they weren't just burning wood, they were burning smart. They were using purpose-built technology and brilliant improvisation to engineer fuels for maximum efficiency and longevity under the most extreme pressure imaginable. The secret wasn't one magic ingredient. It was a mindset. It was understanding combustion, needing stealth, and the relentless drive to innovate when lives depended on it. From the German army's engineered hexamine tablets to the humble fat and charcoal cakes cooked up in a mess kit, the goal was always the same. A fire that worked for you, not against you. Today, we've unlocked a piece of that knowledge. We've shown how those principles can be applied with simple, modern materials to create a fuel source that outperforms most of what you can buy. This isn't just a DIY project, it's a connection to our past and a powerful tool for your future. It's a reminder that with the right knowledge, you can create your own security and self-reliance. Now, I want to hear from you. What other forgotten survival hacks or pieces of historical ingenuity do you think we should bring back? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, stay prepared, and never stop learning.